Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, we just watched the women's Flèche Wallonne. All the favourites were there, as you'd expect. Elisa Longo Borghini, Marianne Vos, Ludwig, who else? Van der Breggen, Vollering, Niewiadoma. So many strong riders and strong teams, particularly SD Worx. Their profile for the women's race, 130 kilometres long, and they do 2 laps of the Mur. So the Mur de Huy defines Flèche Wallonne. They do the first lap with 98 k's done and 32 kilometres to go. Then they have 2 climbs after that, the Côte d'Arafat and the Côte de Chemin de Gueuze. Both of them are not that steep. The first one's 2.5 k's at 5%. The second one is 1.6 k's at 6%. Crest 10 k's from the finish. And then they do the Mur, which is 1k at 11.5%, but it's got steeper parts in there, really steep pinches. I think, what is it, like 20% Benji, nasty road surface, 18% sections. It's nasty, particularly at the end. Anna van der Breggen's won the race 6 times in a row, and she didn't look as good at Amstel, but we'll see how she went today. Live coverage started with about 40 k's to go. There was a break up the road with Chabby, Anna Henderson, I think, for Jumbo-Visma, and Lucinda Brand for Trek Segafredo. Why was that? Sometimes me and you gloss over the break, Benji, but why is those 3 riders, or 2 of those riders, actually important from a tactical perspective that they're up the road with a 30-second lead?
Well, when it comes to the teams that are in women's cycling, we know that Trek Segafredo was one of the heavy competitors of SD Worx, who was not in that front group. Trek Segafredo with Lucinda Brand in that front group means that SD Worx behind needs to set something up in the peloton, needs to start working, set people at the front of the peloton to try and keep that gap relatively low, to keep the race under control. It doesn't need to be, I don't know, like more than 45 to a minute, the gap. But they can keep it roughly at that, because we know that if they come to the Mur de Huy, eventually it should in the end be relatively doable to catch a breakaway of like 30-ish seconds with the likes of Van der Breggen or Van Vleuten on different teams really mashing it up on that wall. But yeah, that's really the reason. They have riders in there that are from teams that are competing with SD Worx, so they're trying to get SD Worx to spend riders to try and control the peloton. But in that process, they obviously spend riders as well. But yeah, that's
but this race, it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
Because how much can Lucinda Brand help you on the Mur if you're Elisa Longo Borghini? That's why it's such a good tactic. And that seemed to be Trek's tactic, which was really good today. It was mentioned after the race that SD Worx made some tactical mistakes during the race by riders on SD Worx. And I think one of them was letting 2 riders from their main rivals go into the break. The second, I think, maybe they weren't referring to it. The second, I think, is they do the first round of the Mur. No real, just some people dropping off the back, but all the contenders are still there. The break is still 20 seconds to those 3 riders. Got Canuel, I think, Canadian national champ, pacing for SD Worx a lot. And then Neve Fisher-Black afterwards on the flatter section. Then they got this third to last climb rather, 2.5 k's, 5%. And SD Worx start forcing really hard on that climb. We've got 23 k's to go, 22 k's to go, chasing back this break, which was at 20 seconds, 23 seconds. And honestly, those riders are going to lose 50 to a minute on the Mur to the contenders anyway. So maybe not 50, but yeah, a lot of time. And they're forcing to bring it back at 20 k's to go. I think Moulin brought it back, or really close, got it down to 5 seconds. They were in sight just over the crest of that shallow gradient but longish climb. And I'm thinking, why are they bringing the break back at 20 k's to go? That's feeding into Trek's strategy, and it did, because then Moulin pulled off, gap was 5 seconds, and then Ruth Winder, winner of Brabantse-Pijl, very strong rider in the last month or so, she attacked, she countered for Trek, going past that break, which had been brought back. Lucinda Brand and Henderson had been dropped, and then Shabby tried to follow her, but didn't quite get on her wheel. So more problems for SD Worx. Again, those Trek riders, are they going to be that much use on the Mur itself for Elisa Longo Borghini? Not really. And now they're forcing SD Worx to chase again. A fresher rider going up the road. She got a 36, 40 second gap on the peloton, which was not able to bring her back before the Mur. SD Worx were having to pace a lot. They burnt all their riders, and then they get onto the last climb with 12Ks to go. Annemiek van Vleuten, who this isn't her exact finale that she would prefer. She prefers going on a longer climb from further out, one would think. She attacks on the second to last climb with 12Ks to go, blows away all the other domestiques. We only have the contenders left. The only team with 2 riders is Vollering and Anne van der Breggen. Van Vleuten doesn't catch Ruth Winder, but she brings it back to 25 seconds. She stops her action because everyone's on her wheel. And in this group, we have, as I said, Vollering, Anne van der Breggen, Ludwig, Mavi Garcia, Elisa Longo Borghini, Niewiadoma, Juliette Labou, and Van Vleuten. And at that point, Benji, with Anne van der Breggen having not looked good at Amstel, working for Vollering, what did you think was the play for SD Worx? Because Vollering had already been trying to chase down moves.
Yeah, I think that at that point it was relatively clear to me that they were going to go for Van der Breggen for the all-out 7 times in a row here, because if you have Vollering already chase down moves and also attack, well, I'm not sure if you can call that a chasing, but she counterattacked someone as well a bit earlier. So she was doing quite a bit of work, and that's honestly kind of because of that move of Molan Pasio a bit earlier. Moman made that attack, and that is basically reducing their numeric advantage to 2 riders. And with 2 riders, you have to choose. If you have riders like Vollering and Van der Breggen to potentially candidates to win this race, then you have to choose one or the other at that point to try and fix the damage you've done that way. And it looks like they chose Vollering as the domestique from that point. They countered with her. They ended up pacing down with her as well throughout the entire last 10-ish kilometers, because nobody else would take over. It's only logical that other teams see that SD Worx is pushing Vollering as a domestique forward. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, just go ahead. Go ahead, take the front.
Yeah.
You can do it.
We'll just and Van der Breggen's won 6 times.
Yeah.
So you're not going to sacrifice yourself to bring her to the foot of the Mur. Especially, like, great work from Trek, by the way. I have to say they played the race as well as they could tactically. But anyway, as Benji said, Vollering pacing, sacrificed herself. Obviously, at this point, we'd realise, like, they're not stupid. Obviously, Van der Breggen was either feeling better than at Amstel, where she'd been sick a couple of weeks ago, or at Amstel they were just giving Vollering an opportunity. And we knew, when she had, even though they hadn't brought Winder back, by the base of the Mur, they had her at 11 seconds, maybe less. The first 400 meters of the Mur are about 6-7%. It only kicks up in the last 900 meters. Vollering paces really hard at the base of that climb. Eventually, Spratt moves up. We're onto the base of the Mur proper with 900 meters to go. Vollering's clearly run out of steam, and we've got all the contenders here, except for Vos. We should have said, by the way, Vos was dropped when Van Vleuten attacked with 10Ks to go, but she wasn't really, we didn't think of her as a contender anyway for this race. Spratt goes through the middle, and then Anne van der Breggen, just like last year, she wanted to ride this full Mur as hard as possible at her pace, moves up on the right-hand side as she looks at it and just starts pacing, drops, I think, everyone except Longo Borghini and Niewiadoma straight away. Van Vleuten is trying to claw back to her, but pops pretty quickly. Ludwig's gone straight away. Somewhat surprising, Benji, given that she came second last year. I think Vollering third. Anne van der Breggen doing her thing, pacing, eventually drops Elisa Longo Borghini, whilst Niewiadoma's moved up into second wheel and is looking good, looking sprightly. She's edging up, almost half-wheeling Anne van der Breggen, who's pretending that she's not even there. She's looking good on the Cowberg, or the strongest on the Cowberg and Amstel Gold Race. And these 2 women, I'd encourage you to go and watch the last kilometre in full if you can. It's incredible. Side by side, half-wheeling each other all up this climb. Niewiadoma getting into Anne van der Breggen's space. It reminded me of like a 5,000 metre or 10,000 metre race, like an Olympic final, when the runners all getting in each other's space, getting their elbows underneath each other. Niewiadoma gets to the last 400 metres, starts to edge past Anne van der Breggen. Are we thinking, is she about to dethrone the Queen of Flèche Wallonne? Tries to take the last left-hander with 250 to go on the inside, pushes Van der Breggen wide, but then Van der Breggen has a second kick with 180 meters to go. I thought she was holding something back. She knows how to pace this climb and kicks past Niewiadoma, gaps her, looks back, almost can't believe it again, and wins by 4 or 5 bike lengths plus arms aloft for her 7th and final Flèche Wallonne victory. Niewiadoma second, Elisa Longo Borghini pipping Van Vleuten for third. Do you enjoy that race, Benji? The finale, even though it sounds predictable, it was actually, there's a lot of tension from my perspective.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that it's partially due to the fact that we saw that attack by Mollman a bit earlier, Ashley Mollman, because that basically forced the race to be more open. They couldn't control the race after that move. And Ruth Winder getting away, they had to kind of improvise behind. They had to choose a different strategy to try and catch Ruth Winder. The gap was around 30 seconds for a bit, so it was quite intense at a certain point. I was like, they're going to have to dig into this gap quite a bit now, because otherwise, if she's got 45 seconds at the foot of the Mur de Huy, then it's going to be relatively close. But in the end, it wasn't close, and we saw a really nice final. We didn't see an all-out domination on the Mur de Huy, I think, in my opinion. Niewiadoma, I feel like she's doing really well this season. I think we've already seen that in Amstel, but I think what is key on this finish on the Mur de Huy is that Van der Breggen always attacks on basically the same moment on the climb. She gets past that corner that kinks the road to the finish line, and a bit after that, that's where she puts that acceleration. I think that we saw her competitor today do it a bit earlier, and I think that might have cost it quite a bit. But on the other end, I think that it's also better because Van der Breggen and Niewiadoma against each other on this finish. I don't know what would have happened if they entered the last 50 meters next to each other. I think that Van der Breggen has a tiny bit more acceleration. We see Cash always on this high end gear and or low gear. Oh my god, I always put him the other way around. You know what I mean? On the big ring. And I think that's kind of the thing there, where that's potentially the reason why Kasha decided to go a bit early on the Mur de Huy. But in the end, I think it's a pretty great race. I really enjoyed it. It opens up sooner than the men's race, most likely, because I do expect the men's race to be a Mur de Huy central once again. Last year we had an early attack of Van Zevenand there, but I don't see that happening this year, but I could be wrong. But we're talking about this after the men's section on the podcast, but we recorded this beforehand, so this is just confusing right now. But yeah.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think this is a good example of where the profile, even though it's similar, much more exciting women's race than a typical men's Flèche Wallonne, which is basically 185 Ks, then a hill test on the Mur de Huy for a couple of minutes.
Yep.
So this, and in terms of, Valverde, he's been dominating Flèche, Van der Breggen's been dominating Flèche, but it was different today. The way it opened up, as Benji said, was really exciting. And I thought if SD Worx stuffed it, Trek played a masterful tactical hand. Is Van Vleuten going to drop everybody? It was a great race. Really enjoyed it. And I'm excited for Liège this weekend. Maybe we should talk about that for a second, Benji. Different sort of race. Van der Breggen said in the interview afterwards, well, if I want to win Liège, I have to go earlier because I got no sprint and it's a flattish finish. Who do you like for Liège, Bastogne, Liège? I like Niewiadoma. She's got to break through.
I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, is Grace Brown riding LBL? Because I think I might be rooting for a longer solo from her on this end. Like last year, but without Lizzie Deignan in front of her. So basically in that format. But like all in all, LBL is a different race. It's going to open up sooner. It's going to have more attrition throughout the race itself. And I think that we saw that last year, and I think it's going to be a similar race format this year. And I like Liège in the current form. I didn't really adore the Côte d'Or finish of a few years ago. It was special, but I think that this kind of changes it. And it doesn't all need to have a hill in the last 2 kilometers. It makes it interesting to have it open up earlier as well. And definitely the hills beforehand, with a lot of so full of definitely do damage. So I like this. I like this sparkle. But another thing I wanted to bring up is
yes,
I think that I haven't done the math, but I think Longo Borghini is back in the Women's World Tour ranking shirt. So another purple shirt on our shoulders in the next race. I could be wrong on the calculations, but it was just after the race. So bear with me here. But apparently, like, they do seem to like have some prestige in that in women's cycling, and that's something we don't have in men's cycling really when it comes to the UCI ranking. Basically, everybody in the men's UCI ranking is like, oh, we don't care about it until they're winning it, and then they're like, oh yeah, I won the UCI men's ranking.
Well, if there was a jersey attached to it, they'd care.
Yeah, I think in the past we had a World Cup shirt for classic races or something like that. That was awesome.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I don't know why Voss, when she wears it, it's pink, and ELB, it's purple. I don't know if I'm missing something, but maybe I'm colorblind. But yeah, I really like it, and it makes sense. It's like an extra competition to fight for, and a rider who's consistent throughout the season and race a lot, which they all do anyway. You know, they deserve it. Yeah. And yeah, I really like it. And you saw ELB, she just pipped Van Vleuten for third. Maybe, I don't know how much of an effect that has on the points. But yeah, I thought it was a great race today. And I can't wait for Liège on the weekend. We'll be doing a Liège preview, so we might give our more thorough thoughts in that on probably dropping on Friday. But that's all from us on the podcast today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you with that Liège preview, as I mentioned, on Friday. If you want to support the podcast, you can always like the YouTube video or share it if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on podcast players, leave us a review on your podcast player. It's very helpful. We're trying to get to 1,000 reviews, or we've also got our Ko-Fi link in the description below should you wish to directly support us. But thanks as always. It's been a great month and a half or 2 months of racing so far, and we'll see you in the weekend. Ciao.